I'm Jessica Bennett, the author of Feminist Fight Club. Feminist Fight Club is a battle manual for fighting sexism at work, full of research and data-backed tools for getting back at man-interrupters, bro-appropriators, and all of the other workplace enemies that women often face in their office environments. It's also a real-life club. It's a group that I've been meeting with since I began my career in New York City, and every month the women would gather, about a dozen of us, and we would talk about our careers, and we would talk about the sexist bullshit that we were facing on a daily basis. I wrote Feminist Fight Club because I felt like there was so much discussion about the problem and not a lot of solutions. Clearly there are huge structural problems that we have to deal with in today's workplace, things like the wage gap, things like parental leave. And yet, as a person starting out my career, I know that I felt pretty powerless to affect change on those issues. And so what was I supposed to do in the moment when I needed to negotiate a raise? Or when I found out that the guy sitting next to me who had the same title and the same job duties was making $10,000 more? So I wrote this book as an attempt to provide really practical tools and battle tactics that every person can do and employ in their daily workplaces and lives to fight back and push back against daily struggles and systemic sexism. My Feminist Fight Club has a couple of rules. The first one is we fight patriarchy, not each other. That means we are in this together, we support one another, and we treat each other as allies, not as enemies. So the Fight Club formed about a decade ago when most of us were beginning our careers. I was a junior reporter at Newsweek magazine. Most of the other members were assistants. Some of them had 2 and 3 jobs working as production, in film, in television, in media, in creative fields in one form or another. And around this time, there were a few things happening. There had been a giant report on the state of gender equality in the United States. And what it found was that things were terribly far from being equal. This was the time that David Letterman had been caught sleeping with his assistant, and that had created waves all throughout the entertainment industry. At the New York Post, the local newspaper in New York City where I live, there was a gender discrimination lawsuit. And all of this was happening around the time that I was just starting out and beginning to feel like there were barriers against me. There were women and men in my work environment, and the men were very clearly rising up the ladder more quickly. And all of us were facing these struggles. And so for a long time, we felt like maybe this was just our individual problem. When I would pitch a story idea and see it appear on the pages of the magazine 2 weeks later under a man's byline, it was very easy to think to myself, well, maybe I didn't pitch it the right way. Maybe I wasn't powerful enough in my delivery. Maybe I'm just not as good a writer as that man. But when we got together and there were 12 women all describing the same thing, then it was very easy to see that this was a systemic problem and a collective problem, not simply an individual one. The book is very much rooted in social science research, and so I spent hours and hours laboring and going through study after study. Not the most exciting work, but very valuable and important work that researchers have done. And the reason was I wanted to make sure that every single fight move I offered here was backed by data. They were actually effective. These are not just my experiences. I have employed them, yes, and they work, but they're also proven to work. So digging through social science research, pulling out tidbits about ways that we can push back against systemic structures, and then, taking those and trying to make them punny and fun and deliver them in a way that felt actionable and pop culture-y. Enemy number 1, the man-interrupter. This is the person, usually a man, who interrupts you when you're trying to speak. Perhaps you're delivering an idea, and women are twice as frequently interrupted as men are. So, the fight moves. Number 1, verbal chicken. Keep talking. Do not stop. Continue to raise your voice and keep speaking even if you have to just say gibberish, and do not back down. Do not let him get a word in. Do not let him win the battle. Fight move number 2, woman interruption. It can be tricky to be in a workplace scenario where you're being interrupted constantly and having to say, hey, can you let me finish? You don't often want to come off as the nag. It's very easy to be perceived as bitchy or too sensitive. So what can you do? You can employ a wingman or a wingwoman to interrupt on your behalf. So this is the person next to you who's going to notice that bro won't stop interrupting you and say, hey, can you let Jess finish? I'm trying to hear what she has to say. Suddenly they're a really great guy or a great female colleague, and you get to say your piece. Another example, the bro-appropriator. This is the bro who appropriates your idea. Now, sometimes this is a malicious action when it's somebody actually taking credit for your work, but probably more frequently, it's actually not malicious. What the research shows is that even in mixed gender settings where there are men and women, when an idea emerges from a group, we instinctively think that idea came from the man. And both women and men will assume this. And so a lot of this has to do with unconscious bias that we all possess that causes us to believe that good ideas are coming from men. So, the fight moves, what can you do? Well, number one, the thank and yank. You can yank the credit back by thanking the person for liking your idea. Oh, thanks so much for chiming in on that. I'm really glad you like my idea. It can be as simple as that. 2, find a wing woman or a wing man. This person is going to repeat your idea and give the credit back to you, ensuring that the people in the room know that this idea came from you. You can employ it in real life. You can employ it in email. You can CC the people in charge. There are plenty of ways to do that. But what it does is it makes that person look good because they're attributing this back to you, and it gives you the credit. Another one is tough talk. Sometimes women have the tendency to be nervous when they speak up, and that is a result of years and years of society telling us that we're not meant to be in authoritative positions. So if you can deliver your idea with such precision and authority, so tough that nobody can ignore you, then likely they're going to remember it came from you in the first place. Another example, the office mom. This is the woman who is tasked with taking on the mother load of menial tasks. She's asked to grab the coffee or the tea constantly. And if she's always having to grab the tea or take the notes in the meeting, then she's not actually there to be contributing the ideas. And at the end of the day, ideas are typically what gets people promoted and recognized for their work. And the research shows that this is common across the board. Women are more likely to be asked to take on administrative tasks, and they're also more likely to volunteer. So, the fight moves. 1, don't volunteer. You are not allowed to volunteer to take notes or to grab coffee. You may, in fact, be the best person for the job, better at taking the notes than your male colleagues. You are still not allowed to do it. Number 2, mother ducker. You're going to duck as many motherly duties as possible. It is not your job to plan the company office holiday party, and it is not your job to plan the birthday cake every time someone in your office has a birthday. So, what can you do? You can delegate these tasks. There are likely other people available to help out. You can create a rotation system so that everybody is taking a turn. And if they need to get done, they need to get done. But most likely people can either get their own tea or you can take turns bringing it to the group. Rule number 1 of the Feminist Fight Club. You must talk about the Feminist Fight Club. Rule number 2. You must talk about the Feminist Fight Club, just in case you didn't get it the first time. Rule 3. We fight patriarchy, not each other. We must treat other women as allies, not our enemies. Rule number 4. Membership to the FFC means you've taken an oath to help women. All women. Veg firm your fellow fighters. Rule 5. The FFC is inclusive and non-hierarchical. Everyone is an equal fighter. Rule 6. If someone yells stop, taps out, goes limp, the fight is still not over. The fight is not over until we achieve equality for all women. Rule 7, which might be a while, so put on your favorite sweats. Rule 8, there are no wallflowers in this battle. Everyone must fight.